Hey guys, Drifter here. Today I've got a video for you about input lag and display lag. These are real physical hardware lags on your video game that can cause you to fall behind the competition. We're going to be talking about what they are, what causes them, and how to prevent these types of lags so that you can play at the absolute best of your ability. We're going to be talking about types of controllers, TV monitors, types of TVs, inputs, gaming TVs, all sorts of different things, and a little section at the end about regular lag and input. First of all, let's define what we're talking about. Input lag is the time between a button press and the action taking place in the game. Display lag is the time it takes your monitor to show the action. These two are different things, but how you feel about them will be the same, because really the only way we have to judge the game is what comes out of our monitor or our headphones or something like that. Ideally, these would be very, very low. These sort of things would be minimal, almost non-existent. However, we do live in the real world, and there is some sort of time delay between when you hit a button and when the action takes place. This should be less than a millisecond in most cases, something that no human being could ever hope to ever sense or feel. We're talking about wiggling electrons. However, you gotta keep in mind that there is a whole big system at play. You're not just literally sending information down a wire. It has to go in the button actuator, through the controller, through the controller board to your console. Your console has to process it, put it in the game has to process it, and then it has to go to your monitor or your display unit, then has to process it and put it back out to your eyes. So all these little steps can stack up upon each other and make some sort of significant delay. In most cases, this is not a big deal, but in some cases it is a very big deal. The most common one that you'll find is display lag, that your monitor actually falls behind the HDMI input to it, or your gaming TV or whatever. So what I use for a reference is a website called displaylag.com. They've got this gigantic database of a ton of different monitors, brands, sizes. I keep saying monitor a lot. I'm going to say TVs because that's important. Lots of TVs, projectors, all sorts of crazy thing here, and it'll tell you exactly how much input lag there is between when the console outputs it and when the monitor is able to process it and then put it out through the screen. You'll see on here that some of them have very, very low input lags of less than 10 milliseconds, which is extremely low. Like, that's something that a human being would never notice. However, there are some other units, now these are mostly larger TVs, which we'll get to in a little bit, that have very significant lag on the inputs. A 70 to 100 millisecond lag is actually considered lagging, depending on where you live and what kind of game you're playing. Like when I play League of Legends, my standard amount of lag is about 75 ms, but if I were playing League of Legends on one of these TVs, what I would be getting is this amount of lag built into my hardware before I'm even actually able to do anything else with it and react, which really screws things up. So when it comes to TVs, and before I go any further, I'd like to say I'm not endorsing a brand or a product, and I'm not paid. I have no promo links anywhere here. This is just my recommendation for you. Things you want to avoid in your televisions when it comes to gaming: number 1 is projectors, number 2 is plasma screens, and number 3 is anything over 47 inches. Projectors being the worst on this list. They have a tendency to have the worst amount of input lag. My experience has been that plasma really isn't the greatest for gaming, and the input lag is a little bit high. This is just a general sort of feel from me to you. It's not a hard fact by any measure. And the same thing with TVs over 47 inches. Typically 47 inches and under, they're all very similar on input lags, and they're low. Not input lags, display lags. I have to make sure that I'm using the right sort of lingo here. Over 47 inches, they have a tendency to be slower, longer delays, and especially when you get up there in the 70-80 inch range, it gets really, really brutal, and you kind of want to avoid that. You also want to avoid additional screen effects. Most TVs these days aren't calibrated right. They'll come with Cine smoothing, or they'll come with like the 60 FPS smooth motion thing that makes, when you watch a movie, it kind of gives your movies a soap opera effect, especially if it's an old movie and they up the frame rate. Or they have other effects like Cine mode. They'll have TV mode, sports mode, gaming mode, all of these sort of different things. Generally speaking, you want to avoid these. Your mileage may vary from brand to brand, but I find that this increases your display lag. So I run my TVs, my gaming units, my gaming TV and my gaming monitors very vanilla, very few effects on. There are some things that you can look for that are good, though, if we're looking for positive selectors. If they have a game mode, all the other modes are bad. Typically a game mode is good. Again, your mileage will vary a little bit depending on your model, but my experience experience has been that a game mode is going to turn off every single post-processing effect that there is and minimize the delay as much as possible. I've had really good experiences with game modes. I've had a few friends, unfortunately, that have not. Computer monitors tend to perform the best. I almost said gaming monitors, but realistically, almost any computer monitor is almost as good as even the most hardcore gaming monitor. When we get to like specialized gaming monitors, the difference is there, but it's very minute and you're not likely to feel or notice it. But monitors do perform the best. Generally speaking, smaller screens, smaller units performs better, and I found that the ones that actually have less HDMI inputs perform better. They just have less to do with the way it's processed. And believe it or not, the games unit, you know, the TV in a suitcase, the games, they sponsor a lot of MLG and Pro stuff. Those also actually have very low display lag. If you are unfortunate enough to be playing on a 65-inch, projector or plasma screen TV with all these modes turned on and you can't turn them off and your input lag is higher than you would like it to be, I highly recommend you go to the display lag site, which I link down in the description. Just play around, find one with low input lag, and click to see which model is best for you. And don't worry about milliseconds. Like some people I have to get the one that has 9 milliseconds. I can't handle 11. You'll never notice it. Just remember that we're dealing with very small increments of time. The next thing I wanted to do is show you some of the things that I play on. Show you that I'm not just BSing you here, that I actually believe this. This is my living room TV with my wife. It is a 65-inch TV, and I really don't game on it because when I looked it up, the input lag was a little bit too high for gaming, but it's not a gaming TV. This is for me to watch movies. This is for me to watch television, those sort of things, so I don't game on this one. However, if you come into my office/game room where I do my work and my commentary stuff, when I live stream and when I play PC games, I play them on these two monitors. These are two very normal standard PC monitors. They're not special gaming monitors or anything. They work great. They're probably the best things I have in my house for gaming. And yes, I know the desk is messy. However, I don't always play on these. I also have a TV, which I believe this one is 46 inches. This is my gaming TV that sits in my room. It's got very little display lag to it. Again, purchased for that select reason. And I do play on this one for a slightly more casual, laid-back experience when I'm not streaming. The next thing we're going to talk about is controllers, because controllers can make a difference. They definitely can. That will, if we're doing PC, it's mouse and keyboard, but mice and keyboards are usually made very well to there's a very little variation between the two. However, controllers have more variation. So things you want to avoid, and this is on all systems, any controllers that have weak batteries, and I mean weak batteries in that they are undercharged, and weak in that the battery itself is damaged. It doesn't charge well, it doesn't hold charge well, it does funny things. All of these can add actual physical hard input lag into your system. The next thing, I guess you could say on the same note, would be a damaged controller. Some sort of controller that has its wireless or wired signal impaired in some way is likely to have input lag. And on that same note, I guess a damaged or older console, a console that often runs really hot or doesn't work well or struggles, or something that's damaged has a tendency to have input lag, sometimes to the point where you can feel it. Also, off-brand controllers are a mixed bag. I'm going to say the majority of off-brand controllers work just fine and you won't have a problem with them. However, some of them are totally screwed up and have extra input lag built into them due to cheap engineering, and that's just a reality that we have to deal with. These are my two Scuf controllers, the Xbox One on the left and the regular one for the Xbox 360 on the right. You pretty much want to go wired for the least amount of input lag possible. The difference between a wireless and wired controller is usually negligible. You can almost never feel the difference unless something else is wrong with your system. But if you want to get really hard and technical about it and shave milliseconds or something like that, wired is the way to go. And if you get a wireless Xbox One, you can just plug it in and it'll work fine. There's nothing wrong with Scufs. These started as regular, normal 360 controllers, and then they're reworked into what they are now. So they're as first party and lag free as they can get. The normal ones also great. First party PlayStation 4 controllers, PlayStation 3 controllers, all those sort of things are good to go. Another thing you can avoid is HDMI splitters or switches. This is very common and popular for commentators. They have like a big box with a bunch of HDMI inputs plugged into it, and they use this box to switch over to whatever sort of HDMI input they need. A good one is just going to have a straight physical pass-through. It'll be built really well. Some of the bad ones aren't necessarily. And they also have HDMI splitters and hang-ups and a lot of different things. These things are highly variable. Some of these are truly awful. I've seen these things add up to like 200 or 300 milliseconds of lag just in the splitters and boxes, the really cheap ones. Some of the better ones, not so much. I would highly recommend that you don't play on these unless you've already tested it and you know it's good and you know it's okay. All of these things are very minor, particular, picky steps. They're not going to radically change your gaming experience, but all of them combined may help. I have a few tips at the end about regular lag. Run wired when you can. Run an Ethernet cable to your modem or your router when possible. Don't play on wireless unless you really need to. And it's also always better when no other people are using the internet or using it heavily, and ping is better than bandwidth. You don't really need a whole ton of bandwidth to play games, but really good ping is very important. Well guys, that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.